Freak, you looking good over there. Freak, man.
Hey, so
Like
are you, man?
freak.
Rocking the blue and gold?
Yeah, man, I'm freaking it since it's cold out here. I stole all these things. So now all of a sudden it's back in style, you know?
Oh, there you go. Yeah, rocking the high school.
Yeah, man, freaking stole it and now it freaking keeps rolling. How about you? How's your life been going, sir?
Life has been, as I guess as good as it can be. You know.
Yeah, I understand. Whenever you're ready, you let me know. We're gonna gas this thing up.
Oh, cool.
It's just whatever, man. This is like a time capsule of you. So imagine your grandkids getting your intimate thoughts and how you feel. Time capsule of Scott.
Oh, wow. Okay. Pressure's on. Is this where I should tell you I have a hysterectomy? No.
You know, it's a hysterectomy is when that little piece of meat falls out of your butt, right? That's the thing.
Yeah.
One time I had one, I think, when I was lifting weights, and I didn't know what it was, and I was trying to cut it off. I was like, I think I got some loose skin. Until I Googled, I was like, oh, frick, I could have killed myself.
Yeah. What happened to Jared Waters? Oh, he bled out through his ass.
He bled out. All right, man. Let's freaking do this thing.
All right, let's do it.
Freak. Boom. All right, folks, welcome back to the podcast, One Man, One Tree in the Hill. It's a podcast about being alone for your own thoughts, and we're not alone for our thoughts. We're making time capsule of most brilliant people around the world. We have a special guest, ladies and gentlemen. He's an actor, director. We could say a man model. We could say that as well. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Scott Monahan. Scott, how are you, sir?
I'm doing good, man. How are you?
Dang, a long time, man. Freaking what, 19 years. Freak, man.
Yeah, I mean, since 2006, right, when we graduated?
No, not even that. Maybe 2004. I left 2004.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, we could have used you in 2006.
Is that when you guys first lost, right? I think that was the first time you guys ever lost.
We were undefeated in league play. You know, it's just we lost in Korea. You know.
That's when they like merged the schools, right? That's when they like merged the schools or something like that. And you guys are playing like Kubasaki when they had they were at Super Saiyan strength with like both schools and stuff, right?
Mm-hmm. That was the time, yeah.
In the old Stars and Stripes. Let's go back. Let's go back, Scott. Before we get to the Scott that we are now, let's go all the way back to how we became this Scott. All right.
Okay.
So, where are you from? Like, where were you born?
I was born in Jacksonville, North Carolina.
Really?
Yeah.
910 Jacksonville, North Carolina?
Yes, sir.
Man, there's some country boys out there. I got cousins all the way out there.
Yeah, my dad was in the, your father was in the military too, I assume. But my dad was in the Marine Corps. So, we grew up kind of like around military bases, kind of following around wherever he was going. But that's where I was born, in Jacksonville.
Camp Lejeune, right?
Roots. Camp Lejeune, yes, sir.
Camp Lejeune, free.
Mm-hmm.
What was your how long did you stay there? Do you remember how long you stayed there as a child, or?
I think I was there maybe like until I was like 4 or 5, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And I grew up around a lot of families. So my dad had 4 brothers and sisters, and they all lived in North Carolina, and they all had a bunch of kids. So I kind of grew up in my early years in a big family of, we had 13 cousins, that kind of like big family setting.
You're Southern, yeah, Southerners. They all have big, massive families in the South.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, no idea you're from the South, freak.
Yeah. And then after that, we moved. When I was about 4 or 5, we moved up to Virginia, and I stayed there until I was 10.
Well, let's go back before that. As you're going through your previous years, what type of, you said big families, or how many of you guys were there? Household, one parent household. What did you have?
I just had a one parent. No, 2 parents. Sorry. Me and my dad and my sister, who is her and I were 14 months apart. So I was kind of the accident, the happy accident child. They didn't know what was coming.
Me and my brother are 15 months apart.
Oh wow, yeah.
Same thing. They didn't expect me to come either. So when do you understand? So do you remember elementary school? Do you have your first remembrance of going to elementary school, in North Carolina? Or do you remember more Virginia memories?
No, I was homeschooled.
Yes.
My mom Yeah, my parents were growing up were very religious, and my dad, um, he was kind of didn't want us to be influenced by secular kids or listen to secular music, and to be homeschooled by my mom who stayed home and did that. So, I mean, I do remember when in when my sister was in first grade and I was in kindergarten, they had tried us out in public school, and it didn't go well. my my sister, I thought it was awesome. I was like, man, this is great. All these kids were running around, but I think we were only in it for maybe a week, and then we went back to homeschooling until all the way until I was in eighth grade.
What type of religion were you guys? Baptist, Catholic?
My father was raised Catholic. His family is like Irish and Italian. And then at some point in my childhood, I remember they switched over into more of a evangelical,
Okay.
non-denominational kind of even like what some might call like a borderline, like fringe church. Like very big. Everybody, like everything that you did was with the church, whether it was a vacation or a retreat or the cell groups and worship nights and stuff like that. It was all, your entire life was surrounded by the church.
Was it like revivals, like people laying hands on people? Was it that type of stuff?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That's
People
what I
laying
remember. I
hands.
remember that we would talk about like stuff happening in our church. And he's like, yeah, I've seen it too. We're like, freaking Scott.
Is Scott Baptist?
We're in a non-denomination, but it made more sense because now since you're from the South, I get it. You know what I mean? Like I think all
Yeah.
Southern religions my parents are super strict as well.
Mm-hmm.
No secular music. I remember my dad found our Big Pun CD and broke all my brother's CDs and was just like, he's like flinging them over like the Japanese bass and flinging all the discs down and stuff like that. He broke my R. Kelly selection. He's like, what is this crap that you guys got?
That's because he knew. Yeah.
It's because he knew. So
Yeah,
like when you're young, when you and your sister are young, do you guys notice like, man, it's only me and her? Do you notice that at an early age?
Yeah, I think well, there was at a very early age, because my father was he was a Marine Corps helicopter pilot, and if you know anything, or if you don't, about like kind of military tracks, and especially for pilots, the more you work and the more jobs that you take on, the more you get promoted, and those jobs can sometimes be 6-month tours, 8-month tours, and often without the family. So I spent a lot of my childhood just me, my mom, and my sister. And it's kind of all I knew it was kind of the three of us. We would, any errand my mom had to go on, we'd go with her. My classroom was, me and my sister. So I just kind of really got locked into this very like small educational setting that's kind of what I was used to.
Walk us through like a first educational day in a homeschool. And this is like the early late 90s. So walk us through what's that like?
Yeah. Well, we would get up in the morning, and the something that I've always, looking back on homeschooling, what I really enjoyed about it was there was a lot of independence to it. So me and my sister were very close in age, but by 1 year. So anything that I was learning, she had just learned. So my mom was also learning how to teach those things, and so we would sit down and we would do a math lesson together, and a lot of it included independent reading. So I would read the lesson, I would do the assignments or whatever, and then there was times that we would do stuff together, whether it was working on memorization, or turning on a nature documentary, or watching something about like History Channel as like a as you might watch a video in class or something. And something I also really liked about it, that I think distilled a sense of independence and like efficiency for me, was that I realized at a young age, as soon as I'm done with school, I can go play. Mm-hmm. So I started finding ways of just really like taking that workload along myself and saying, okay, yeah, I'll get this stuff done and I'll go play basketball, you know?
So when you're in Virginia and you go to Virginia, what's that like when your dad tells you like we're going to Virginia now? Is it like nothing because you and your sister are like this cohort together pretty much?
Yeah.
You guys are kind of
Yeah.
raised like twins a little bit.
Yeah. It really, I mean, they call, I think 12 months
Irish twins.
apart as an Irish twin. So we're pretty close to that. And yeah, I mean, my whole life was, as being a military kid, it's like you just go. And of course you make friends outside of homeschooling, mainly based on the church. So we had this very deep church community, and a lot of the people in the church that we went to were homeschooled as well. So even though I was in these small, you know, independent school settings with my sister, we would go on these massive field trips with like 30, 40 kids, or, you know, meet up with other homeschool families and go on field trips. So I had a early sense of community, but it was definitely isolated to religion and homeschool. So I wasn't really, I didn't really have an opportunity to meet so many other kids that didn't share the same kind of mindset that we did, or have the same beliefs.
So we're in Virginia. When do you leave Virginia? How long do you guys stay in there?
We stayed there, moving around from, we lived in Chesapeake for a little bit. And we moved to Japan in 1999.
Really? That early?
Yeah. Yeah. My parents, my dad had retired from, or joined the reserves and went to grad school for guidance counseling.
So what's that like when dad's like, I'm out of the military? Do you remember that talk when he's talking to the family? What's that like when he's saying that?
Well, my childhood was, it was interesting because my father was gone a lot, and there was also a lot of discord between my parents for things I wasn't sure, you know, exactly what they were about. And so I just assumed, it was like, well, dad's not here that often, and that's why there's this, you know, this kind of like, I don't know, tension between the two of them. And it seemed like the switching into being a teacher was going to enable him to have more time with his family, which is something that he really missed out on.
So you picked that up at like age 10, that your parents,
Oh yeah.
you just like, my dad's always gone, and you just noticed it, or?
Yeah, I noticed it. I noticed, I think children are insanely smart, especially with emotional intelligence. You see like little babies talking to their dads on, you know, like funny videos, and you can see the emotion that exists with them. They're still figuring out what it means, but I think I was very aware at an early age of people's emotional energy. You know, like some people, what is it called when you can see color and sound? I think it's called synesthesia.
Mm-hmm.
Not that I have any kind of sixth sense, but emotional intelligence, or like emotional understanding, was something I picked up very young. So I could just get this sense that there was a bigger reason outside of just wanting to spend more time with the family. But then, so when he joined Department of Defense, which is the military school teachers kind of program, we had thought we were going to be going to Europe, because you can select a couple of countries that you would like to go to that have positions available. And then one day we were learning German in homeschool. We were like ready to go. And we get this call, and they say, you're going to Japan. Mm-hmm. And, you know, my family was like, because if you turn it down, you have to wait another 2 years. And my family was ready to go to Europe. But as soon as I heard Japan, I mean, Pokemon was popping off in '99. I was like, yo, let's go, man.
Ash.
Yeah, Ash Ketchum here. I was like, let's go to Pokemon country. So I was stoked about that.
When you do that, so 1999, you leave your 7th grade year, right? Your 7th grade year is when you get to Japan, or 8th grade?
No, so 1999, I was, let's see, I was born in '88. So I was just turning 11.
So you're going.
I was 10. Yeah, I was 10, and I was just turning 11.
Yeah. Because I remember you were like homeschool, and everyone was just like, you ever seen that movie Jack with Robin Williams?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, everybody's like, what? That's Scott. And we're like, who's Scott? He was in his house the whole time. Like, this is the first time he's been outside.
He bathes in milk.
And I remember Garrett's like, no, that's Scott. That's Scotty, man. That's Scott. He lives in my neighborhood. And like, I was new. I was new, but then that was the first time people like seeing you alive. Not alive, but just like, yeah, that's Scott. He lives in his house. He never comes outside, but he's super fast and everything else.
You just see my face from the window.
Jack!
Garrett! Goody! Yeah.
Asking J-Lo to the dance and stuff like that with giant morph disease. Walk me through the first time you get off that plane to Japan, because I feel like everyone I talk to from Japan, there's like a scent that everybody remembers when you first get off the plane.
Oh man, well, I just want to take it back, like just like a couple of hours of getting or 12 hours, however long the flight was. This is before the internet was super wide used and popular. So when I was thinking about what Japan looked like, I had no idea, besides some like, you looked at a travel book, but I was thinking samurai swords. I was thinking, like temples. I had no idea. I was a 10-year-old kid. You know what I mean? My imagination was running wild. I was like, what if do people still ride? I don't know, horses? Like, who knows? And so, getting to that city, I just remember getting off the plane and into the city and seeing the scope of it and the size of it from a kid from the South, from North Carolina. Like the biggest city I had seen was Norfolk, to be in Tokyo, and the technology and automated doors and fingerprint technology on the cell phones. I was blown away. And I felt excited that I was in this, like, it felt like I had time traveled to the future when I thought I was going to the past,
Dude, I realized they were light years ahead of us, man. Always light years ahead of us.
I mean, you think about even today, you think about, mask wearing and that being this, a political issue for a lot of people. But I remember growing up, people would wear a mask like that for allergies, or people would wear that if someone had a cold, just to make sure they didn't spread it. And so when those masks started coming around here, it was like, oh, I've seen this before. This isn't as like,
shocking.
It's not as shocking. Yeah. Like I grew up seeing that on the trains.
Yeah. I remember getting to Japan and asking these Japanese kids about Dragon Ball Z. And they were so like distraught. Like, my parents watched that. And I was like, what? Your parents? I'm like, yeah, this is how it ends. And he gives me a DVD. And I was like, this is how it ends? This is how it ends. That's how it ends. I was like, what? It's over? Yeah, that's how it ends. I was like so shocked. Like, really? They're like, yeah, it's ended in the 90s. I'm like, ended in the 90s? We just started watching it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's over. Yeah. Light years.
It's done.
What was it like? So you get off there, you make it. What's that flight like? 12 hours from North Carolina? Did you go from North Carolina to, like, you probably flew from DC, right?
Yeah, well, we were in Virginia at the time, so we flew out of, I'm not sure if there was a connecting flight. I'm pretty sure we flew out of DC, and it was like I think 13 hours, as a kid. That is, I mean, I was always a hyper high energy child. So, and this is before you had this wide selection now you have on. I feel like an old man. I guess I am talking to my grandchildren,
Yeah,
but this is,
that.
but this is before, they had a long library on the thing. So there was only, this movie's playing from 9 p.m. to 11, but I do remember there was a young Japanese kid that was maybe like 4 or 5 that was sitting in the row behind me. And him and I were like, we just became fast friends, and he was teaching me Japanese and I was eating his weird snacks, and handing him like Reese's. And it was a cool little experience of what I was going to get a glimpse of once we got there. Like, oh, I'm about to meet people I've never thought I would ever meet before,
Do you think would you say, being like your parents are Southern, Was the discipline tougher in America, or do you think it was tougher when you went to Japan?
Do you mean by like how they discipline,
Like
or?
the strictness of like being like religious, because I feel like
Hmm.
when you're in a homeschool, it was, even though you were in like this religious cohort, like when you got there, it's just like every religion combined to one. All these different cultures are confined. Because North Carolina is I said it's very cultural, but it's really by your neighborhood.
Yeah,
So
for
whoever
sure.
lives in your neighborhood, that's where you're gonna meet the cultures. But like when you're confined to like a place where everything is crammed into one, you start blending these cultures and different religions and binding the one. How did your parents take that to be like, all right, you're about to see some wild stuff? Or how did your mom know to like not homeschool you anymore? What was that conversation like?
Um, well, the home that came from. Uh, well, to go to the discipline question, I don't remember there being a large shift because the other religion that my father believed in was the religion of the military. So there's a lot of discipline and order and you know just how things are done, um, and some of that really instilled into me as a child. You want to rebel against that, but I really did get a lot of structure and order from that in my life of how I do things now with attention to a detail and efficiency, and my room's always tidy, kind of like um, thing. But I don't remember the discipline really shifting much. Um, I do as like growing up and you start doing worse things, when it goes from like taking your sister's candy to listening to Eminem, it's like the punishment is drastically different.
Marshall.
Yeah. But the transition from homeschooling into public school was my sister. It was well, something about the military base that changed for me from the rural setting that I had in the South was that I was now surrounded in a very small area again, which I was kind of used to, this confined like group. But now that group of these like all these religions on the base of people that believe different things and kids that do different stuff, um, those were the people I was hanging out with. So I had some military homeschool families that I would hang out with, but then when school was out and I would go to the skate park or I'd go play basketball or I'd go to the pool, I would meet these other kids. And it was, I'll never forget, you probably remember DJ McCary telling you about this, but so I was a young kid and my mom used to take me to the skate park, right? And like she would accompany me there and I would have all my pads on and everything and look like a total nerd. And so this one day I get to the skate park and DJ's there, and I say, "Hey, how's it going? I'm Scott." And he was like, "What's up, man?" I'm DJ. And I was like, "Oh, DJ, have you met the Lord? Is Jesus in your life?" And I just remember him just kind of like laughing at me and then like going down the ramp. And I was like, "Oh man, I messed it up." Like, and I never lived that down, man. He would, and that was the first time I was like, "Oh, not everyone." It was my one of my first main interactions with someone where I was like, "Oh, not everybody like does this, or not everybody talks about this outside of the house or the church." And the skate park is where I learned a lot of like, oh, kids listen to punk music, or what are those kids smoking over there, so the transition into public school was a gradual process of me starting to see that I wanted to be involved in those people. I wanted to be around people that felt more like me. As my views were starting to change and I was starting to become my own person, I wanted to be in a more public setting, out of the out of the house, free Scott.
Free Scott. And I think we thought you were a Mormon for real.
Right.
Have you accepted Jesus as your Lord and Savior? Like, yo, Scott's just like us, man. But we just think he's Mormon. I think that's when we met each other. And then I was like, this is probably the fastest white dude we ever met in our lives, to be just like super speed everything else. For us, you were like our junior Mike Chamberlain. I was like, Scott would get that ball, and if I'm not mistaken, didn't your dad used to come to the football games?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, and I
Mhm.
remember him just woo. I was like, yeah, these country boys out here doing things like that. So as you go, so what do you notice about how religion changes though? How did you notice that? You're just like, was it the same church setting that you were going to? Because I felt like they're like different churches off base, different churches on base.
Mm.
Which one did you go to?
We went to, I'm trying to think about where we started out going to. I think we tried the Protestant church on base for a little bit. And I think that wasn't really it felt, that wasn't really the style my dad was looking for. And then we found this church off base that we had to drive an hour to go to. You remember Jeremiah Piercy, right?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, so we went to the same church as the Piercys. That was it's about an hour away, and it was started by this Hawaiian and Japanese man and wife, and it was really crazy. I think I still know some of the songs in Japanese because they would sing a worship song, and you would sing it in English, and then you would sing it again in Japanese, and they had a little projector, so like you could we were singing worship songs and I still sing them sometimes, like just like, why do I, you get a song stuck in your head, but it's like, shout to the Lord in Japanese or something like that,
Yeah. So you go in church, you're picking up things. So like, what was that like? What was that like when does your sister ask first? Like, are we going to public school? Like, where's that transition happens?
Yeah, my
What's that
sister,
conversation like?
I think my sister I don't remember the exact conversation, but I do remember her going ahead of me. She went into her, she was doing her freshman year, and she was halfway in. So she was doing like I can't remember. She was either halfway or like full way, like half days. But so we decided, and at this time, my dad, this was around 9/11 time. So my dad had been gone. And I mean, another a transitionary, issue for me was that my dad was the middle school guidance counselor. So, and so, everybody knew me as like, oh, that's the counselor's son, like the, the kids that were in middle school when I was younger. And I was like, what? Like I was going to go tell my dad that they were doing the stuff. But when I decided that I wanted to go into 8th grade, and I was going to do half days. So I would do, I think it was the first 2 classes. I'd ride the bus in the morning, do the second class, have lunch, play PE, like play some basketball, and then go home. And that was my transition into, I was just like, I'm ready. And then my freshman year, I went in and then from then on into like full-time public school.
Do you remember the first friends that you met that you started making bonds with? Who were those people like did you first met? There's the story about DJ. Who were the first people where you met? Like, oh man, it's gonna be all right.
Like in middle school?
Yeah, like first friends, like when you first got to the base of these, because I feel like every time I speak to people, they have like these first people they meet, and those are the people they make these bonds with, and then it starts spreading.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I met DJ early. I think he was a little older than me, so there wasn't like a close, but but Dre Cabral, I met at the skate park as well, and well, just to fast forward as many years to as we are now, from maybe 2000 to now 2020, Dre Cabral now lives here in LA, and Dre Cabral just got a motorcycle. I have a motorcycle too, and I've been riding for a year, and I was like, all right, Dre, like, let's go for a ride. And we're in the middle of downtown LA. We're both on the same brand of bikes, and I lift up my visor at the stoplight and look over at him like, yo, did you ever think that you and me would be on motorcycles together in Los Angeles 14 years, 20 years later? It's a trip. So yeah, so like Dre, the Piercys, they were my next door neighbors, and they became kind of like a source of, they had a big family of mostly all boys. So that was my go-to. Like I had a sister, and I would go over there. And then, but I remember my first friends in public school I met on the basketball court, during lunch. So like Shamar Howell and, and like Garrett was out there, and, I still have a very fond memory of Joe Saffold starting that in the whole world, and and got everybody in the thing out there clapping and singing the song. It was like, I was like, oh man, what's an outcast?
What's an outcast?
Can I be an outcast? It's like, man, it's a band.
What's an outcast? What's an outcast?
Yeah. You boy.
Oh, freak. So what was school like when you go there? Is it easy or is it hard? Because I feel like homeschool kids are probably a whole lot smarter because they understand structure. They're not limited distractions. So when you start doing public school, do you find school easy or do you find it tough? What do you find?
No, I started doing worse. I started doing worse in when I started going to public school. I have ADD, right? So like my attention deficit disorder, like hyperactive attention and like focus is like a very hard thing for me sometimes. And in homeschool, my mom would do, I think this is like one of the reasons why I was so fast, was that I would have so much energy. She would just send me on laps around the house. She'd be like, go do 20 laps. And I would run around the whole base building, and just run until I was tired and come back in. And if I still had too much energy, she'd be like, all right, 40 push-ups, just try to wear me out.
She was getting ready for 2-a-days.
Yeah, she was training the beast. But, then transitioning into public school, and you have like, you can't go anywhere unless you get the pass for the bathroom. And now I have all these kids and these like people and girls and like people making jokes and passing notes. It was a feeding ground of distraction for me. And as much as I loved being taught by all these other people, I was there for the people more than I was there to learn something, is how I felt. You know what I mean? Like I was learning about how to interact socially. That's what I was like. I mean, I wasn't not learning, but that's what I was most interested in, was like understanding people.
Would it be safe to say that you are finally unsheltered?
Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure.
Unsheltered.
I mean, I remember, whether it be music, whether it was, clothes, like what people were wearing, what people were listening to, how they were doing their hair, like what people were talking about, jokes. Like it was like this whole world had been open to me. And I don't regret being raised the way I was, but because I feel like I can be a very impressionable person. And so to have time to focus on those values and like core things before being opened up to these kind of ideas, for me, it worked. But it also kind of became this roller coaster of like, all right, full speed ahead. We're going down the hill. I wanted to absorb it all.
When so you're introduced to this world, you're meeting like different, and sometimes I describe Japan where we specifically were, because a lot of people in different bases don't have the experience, is like when the X-Men finally find Professor X, where all these people are from different places and it's okay to be weird.
Yeah.
Like it was never shunned upon for being different.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh, that's freaking Scott. Those are the boys. Those are the Piercy boys. These are the homeschool dudes.
Yeah, that's something that I thought was, again, that like I really think it was amazing about that experience was how many people from all the different states in the country. I mean, you hear stories about people that never leave their hometown and never leave their home state to see anything else, and to be in a classroom with a kid from Texas and Florida and Ohio, Nevada, Colorado, and like wherever, all different races, all different backgrounds, all different religions, more so than just a public school in the US, international kids. Like it was it shaped who I am as a person, to be more open and accepting to all people, you know.
Yeah.
Just understanding that people come from different places, you know.
Did you ever have a teacher that stood out that really had an impression on your life? Do you have any of those teachers that really were like Scott, that encouraged you or anything else as you were growing up through your adolescence?
I think my favorite teacher that I ever had was Lance Posey. That's his name, right? Is it Lance Posey? Mr. Posey?
Yeah, that sounds familiar. Yeah.
He was he's the JV basketball coach as well. And him and Pujol, who was also my coach but taught PE. So with being a kid that his father was gone a lot, and also me and my father's relationship was very contentious. I was often looking for these like sources of male kind of like father figures in my life, and even looking for, in relationships with friends, I was looking for brothers, you know. And I found my brothers in people like the Piercies and like Dre and those people, but the father figures were like Coach Kitts, you know, 8th grade wrestling team, like, you know, Posey, JV basketball, you know, Pujol, these men that, you know, because like for Posey, like I was terrible at science. Like my weakness is math. Like I'm good at like writing and like, you know, presentations, but like science was really hard for me. But I remember he was just very strict, but also like I don't know, he was able to be both things, where you could be you know, commanding presence, you could want the best for somebody, but then you can also, I don't know, he was someone that I kind of like, it was like, oh, that's he knows how to shape people.
Did you notice how young they were?
The teachers?
Did you notice Kitts was only like 24 years old?
Yeah. Well, I remember, like, I mean, I think he was so big, you know, like he was like, like he was a big man. So I didn't think I remember thinking that he had like a youthful thing, but I think at that age I wasn't thinking about like what 24 meant. You know what I mean?
Right.
But yeah, they were all young besides Mr. Theck. I mean, Theck was like,
Theck was old as F.
Theck he's still teaching.
The
He's
old
probably
trick, huh? The old Wickery. He would say the most weird. It was funny, but he's like, you know what? The old witch around the roo trick, huh? The old dog ate my homework trick, huh? Like, what?
Sneaking around the back, are we?
So, all right. So when you say your dad and your relationship was pretentious, what was so pretentious about it?
Not pretentious.
What did I say?
Contentious.
Sorry, sorry. Contentious about the relationship.
Well, my, you know, let's see. There was this explosion of me going into being exposed to the world. Mm-hmm. A resentment at the time for his desire for me to be, you know, like in the Bible, it's like he would always say to me, we are from this world, we are not of it. Or we're like, whatever that verse is. But I at a very young age was like, I can be both. I can be in and of this world and not, you know what I mean? So there was just this discord in beliefs in that of, you know, like don't sag your pants or don't listen to rap music or, you know, also he held me to such a high standard that I found to be, you know, like an impossible standard to reach. To mow the yard, and he'd be like, "You didn't do this right." Or, so there just started to be this build of that, and then also I think, you know, with kids around the block being like, "Oh, you're the guidance counselor's son," I think this thing started to come up in me of like, well, I need to show that I'm not that kid. I'm not this like goody two shoes. And that started to instill this like a little bit of a rebellious nature. But also my parents, my dad was, you know, uh, I guess you call it like verbally abusive. Like, he yelled a lot, you know? And so our relationship was, you know, kind of, especially as I got older, you know, I guess a parent might assume that their child can handle more. You know what I mean? They start to grow up and become a man. But it started to, and not only to me, he would also, you know, that was how he spoke to my mother, and, you know, hearing that night after night, it really started to take a toll on me, and started to be like, started a path of even pushing away religion and Christianity. Cause I was like, listen, man, you say you're this, you know, this Christian guy, and you go to church and you put on this face, but you just yelled at us on the way to church the whole way. It's like, who are you? And if you are this guy that says you believe this thing and this is who you are, that's, you know, seeing those flaws, made me say, like, maybe you don't know what you're talking about.
When you challenge your father, what's that like? The rebuttal? What's the rebuttal back?
I mean, I remember, I just remember crying a lot as a kid. You know, I was like I was saying earlier, a very emotionally sensitive kid. And, you know, I had a mother who was very strong and protective as well. And so you had this duality of this like father who's trying to toughen you up, and this this mother who's trying to protect you and shelter you. Yeah, I mean, just getting grounded, or you know, being like, I don't know, I think, yeah, and times in which he would like yell at me in front of my friends, and this like embarrassment. But I do remember I did stand up to him a lot, and stand up for my mother a lot, or my sister. And you know, I don't know, I can't remember, you know, the immediate reaction.
Let's back that up. What's your relationship with your grandfather, his dad? Was his dad living when you were?
Yeah, but so his dad, you know, through learning this through my dad's brother, was also a very, he was a Marine as well, and kind of a very similar childhood. My dad and his dad fought a lot. My grandfather, on my dad's side, I only really knew him when I was in Virginia, North Carolina. So for like the first 10 years of my life. And then after that, I didn't really, you know, as you're on a military base in another country, you don't really, maybe but once a year. But, you know, you could see, my mom had always said to me as a very young child, she was like, you have to break the cycle. There is a repeating cycle of these men and she would, because I would go to my mother and be like, what is his problem? Like, blah, blah, blah. And she'd be like, this is how his father was to him. And this is how he is. And this is this line that's coming along. And you are here to break that, to not be like that. And I remember feeling like a pressure, but also it felt like, I don't know, like a video game you're given, like in Zelda, like you're given this, like your main quest, you know? And it was like, break this cycle of men that behave this way. You know, be different, be emotionally available, be kind, be, you know, whatever that is.
If you notice, because my dad's from North Carolina as well, and he raised us like strict with the Bible and stuff like that. But I noticed when we got to Japan, we rebelled against everything. And I think it's because sometimes they're raising millennials, and it's nothing that no one's ever seen before.
Yeah.
Question everything, we challenge everything, and we can interpret the Bible for our own.
Yeah.
You know, I remember my brother saying like some wild stuff, and I remember just saying like, Yo, Jesus wasn't in a church, so why are we in a church?
Mm,
He wasn't in church.
blasphemy.
Yeah, he was just out with the people.
Yeah.
There was no where would they put a church in? He was throwing things in church because he didn't like the way everything was ran.
Yeah.
And sometimes like going to church every day was just like, freak, you know, even though it's still instilled in me now, I still go, but I go
Hmm.
because my personal, I want to. I remember being young, like, freak, we're going again, man, freak, we've been here for 3 hours. Like, the freak are we still doing here?
Yeah.
And it was
Yeah. I
like,
think,
for us to be like that, everybody was like very religious, but very rebellious at the same time.
yeah, I think also, have you read The Giver? Did you read that in middle school?
Yeah, I read that one.
Um, I don't know about you, if you had the same kind of thing, but when I read The Giver, I imagined our military base as being the place where The Giver was happening. So
Ooh.
maybe it's just my own imagination, but if you think about, you know, you have this perfect storm of these children who are now millennials, their parents who are military, you could say across the board, at least disciplined and structured as parents, and people chose that life path. And then you're from all these different places, and you've been sent somewhere against your will. So maybe you've left friends, maybe you've left your family, your, you know, whatever. And then you're put on a base that is, you know, there's armed guards, and there's 25-kilometer-an-hour speed limit, and there's not a lot to do, and everything looks the same. The rebellion feels like, you know, it felt like a little bit different than just a typical teenage rebellion. It felt like, man, I'm rebelling against everything that I know, everything around me. I have to stand out of this beige and brown. I I'm not military, but I'm, you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to join. Like, I'm not these guys, like, you know. And it started it for me. I felt like that was this perfect storm, because I saw, if you look at our entire high school, and some of the, you know, the trouble people got into, or the stuff, you know, that happened on our school, it's like, it all makes sense to me. It's like, oh, all these things were happening at the same time. The explosion of technology, the access to all information and music, the you know, the rigidity, the religion, the military. It was like, and I think that's why there's these certain relationships from that time on that military base that are special, very special, you know, of those people that you went through that with.
That was really a way better analogy than I thought of. I went straight Marvel, but that actually that more that makes a whole lot more sense, because I wonder, like, these bonds that we all have. It's just like, even if I haven't spoken to anybody for like years,
Mm-hmm.
if I see them, it was just like, me and my lady were talking about. She's like, "You're very emotional." I was like, "Man, I just saw my freaking girl Lysel. What the freak?" Like, and she's like,
Mm.
"Wow, how long have y'all seen each other?" And I was like, "Freak."
Oh shit.
Nah, it's all good. So I was like, "Freak,"
Yeah,
and like the freak. You know what I mean?
yeah, for sure. Sorry, I just lost my Zoom for a second.
So as you're going through that and you're standing up to your dad, what is your sister doing? You know, what's your sister? Is she going through the same similar emotions that you're going to? Like, what did your parents say about dating? Were they like, we're against it in this family, or?
Um, my parents were open to dating, um, but um, I mean, yeah, my sister was different. If I was the rebellious child, she was um, more well behaved.
Mm,
Rebelling, she was, you know, rebelling in a way. I mean, I can't fully speak to a teenage girl's experience. You know, I have no idea, but um, she was finding, she did very well in school. She was, you know, on the drama club, and you know, straight A student, and a very diligent, hardworking, studying after class, study groups kind of person. And I think for myself as well, being so close in age to my sister, I was trying to, you know, maybe this is a recurring theme for me, was trying to set myself apart from someone. So where I had done that with my dad, I was like, I don't want to be the guidance counselor's son, I was also finding like, I don't want to do what my sister does. I don't want to do, she was in theater and plays, and I was like, I'm going to do sports, and you're in study groups, and I'm going to go to the skate park, and I'm going to rebel and be kind of the opposite.
Do you feel like your mom understood you best?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm a mama's boy for sure. Something that
what were those conversations like with her when you're like rebelling? What was she the one saying to you?
Well, yeah, I mean, my mom was like, and is a very, she became the school nurse, in the high school, and still to this day is one of her favorite jobs, because she was able to, she had, as a nurse, she worked as a psychiatric nurse for many years before becoming a school nurse. So she has a lot of training and has always been really interested in personalities and psychology. So my mother always raised me trying to understand where these things were coming from, where these impulses were coming from, or helping me understand myself through a psychological thing of saying, well, you are an introverted person, or these are certain things that are happening to you. And she was really helpful in a way to help me understand. As a man, I think oftentimes we're told to suppress our emotions, to not talk about our feelings. And my mom,
Say that part again. We got lost. Say that part again.
oh, sorry. My mom, as a man, I feel like we're told to suppress our feelings and our emotions, and to be tough, and my mom always taught me, I would bottle stuff in, for a long time. And then she'd be like, how are you? I'm fine. How are you? I'm fine. And then one day she'd be like, how are you? And then it would be like a 4-hour conversation, and I would cry and I would talk about all the stuff that was going on. And she would tell me, she's like, you don't have to hold that all in. You hold it in and it becomes this pressure that you can't bear. And then you lash out. She's like, you can talk about these things as they come to you and process them as they happen to you. And that really trained me to get good about talking about my emotions and the complicated things about how people make you feel.
So did you not get into sports? Like, how did you got into sports and not do what your sister did?
Mm-hmm.
When did you start like falling in love with sports?
Well, I think that I always loved, I was playing soccer, and
Soccer was your thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was playing sports. Did karate. Like, even when I was homeschooled, I would like write out little like workout routines for myself, like 20 push-ups, 50 jumping jacks, like Monday. And like, I was always a very like athletically minded kid, but high school specifically, and actually 8th grade wrestling, was when I started to really get into the idea of competitiveness and team sports, the idea of changing your body and putting yourself through this kind of like gauntlet and rigorous training. And that, again, that camaraderie with men of like this, the bonds that you make of like, playing a football game that's war. It's a battleground. Yeah. And I think football specifically was something that I didn't really, I would play touch football growing up, but never played Little League or Pee Wee. And, having older male influences like varsity players to look up to, and to get like just trucked by in 2 days and stuff. I think that, to be honest, like a turning point in sports for me was in football when Coach Hal told me, he's like, you're gonna get injured out here. One day I was just like, I couldn't figure out tackling and getting tackled and how to run the ball, and he was like, if you hold up, if you go slow before the hit, you're gonna get hurt. And I was like, okay. And he's like, it's physics. Like, the two things, if they're going full speed at each other, you're not going to get hurt. You're both going to, and so I just learned, like, oh, wait, so I can just run as fast as I can into somebody and see what happens. And he was like, pretty much. And I was like, okay. And I think that moment was like, oh, it gave me this sense of, especially, with what we've talked about, what was going on at home, it made me feel invincible and strong and unstoppable.
I remember as you played your freshman year as well, right?
No, I played my sophomore year.
I remember them giving, it was a sophomore year when them giving you that jersey, and they gave you a speech about the jersey. You remember that? When they're like, Scott, when you drape this jersey, this is the spirit of Mike Chamberlain.
Oh shit, dude, I do remember that.
It was this whole speech about it because, like sports, I really think, I'm going to get back to the Mike Chamberlain story, but I really think sports plays a very psychological thing within like young boys about the feeling of not being enough, the feeling of like when you talk about embarrassment. Because I remember that summer of me lifting weights, and I remember me getting cut off varsity. I remember me, like, them sending me down to JV. And then I remember the speech, they're talking to you about that jersey. And like, Scott, let me tell you something. So not everyone dons this jersey. And it was like the first year playing, and they were like hyping you up. And it's like, who? And we like had all these tapes with like Mike Chamberlain and stuff, and all the other big guys are like, dude, only 23. Not everyone's wears that jersey, man. 23. It's your jersey. And you're just hyped up. And then I remember Shamar walking up to me. He's like, Scott's gonna get killed. He said they're gonna kill that boy. They're gonna send him back home. They're gonna send him back home.
Bro, they killed me, man.
I remember it was just, I remember it was hidden. I remember Sam Little, she hit the piss out of somebody. Yep. I remember they were saying, like, when people keep saying, like, we had girls on our football team, I said, that girl was squatting 210 pounds. I was like, I remember her, like, destroying someone and just like, bam.
Yep. Yeah, I think Shamar Howell, I mean, God, that guy was a huge support system for me in high school. It was a role model for me of his skill on the football field, and also like at some point, I don't know if it was I think it was in eighth grade, because that first basketball game I played in eighth grade, Shamar let me play, and I was on his team. And we had this like friendship, like Shamar and I wouldn't like hang out after school kind of thing, but like he always had my back, whether it was me and Nick Aubrey getting in a fight in eighth grade or, he took on this role of like this like protector. And I remember some guy wanted to fight me after school. Do you ever remember this story? I can't remember who the guy was, but there started this rumor. It was like my sophomore year, and they're like, someone wants to fight you. And I was like, what? Who wants to fight me? Why? He doesn't like you. He's going to fight you after school. And, I found Shamar, and he was like, well, you got to fight him. You got to be ready. And I was like, he's going to fight you at the buses. And I was like, at the bus in front of all these people? So I was like, I was scared. And Shamar was like, I got you, man. And he like, he escorted me like to the buses, and the dude never showed up, so nothing ever happened. But
that's what happened.
Oh yeah.
He picked him up and he goes, hold on, Jared. This is trying to fight Scott. I was like, Scott Monahan? And he grabs him, just bang, throws him through the window, and he runs, and then he drops. He had that Playboy bunny earring he had.
Oh yeah.
And it falls out, and then Mr. goes, Jared, you know who was fighting? I said, nah, I didn't see anything. Oh yeah? And he picked up the Playboy earring. Tell Shamar to come to my office. I would say this, Shamar's heart was bigger than his body.
Oh yeah.
I say that even before the day he died, he was like that. To the end, like we would like, this podcast is kind of like started like all the conversations that we had. I was like, man, I should have recorded like 3 hours and stuff that we're talking about. But I remember him just always asking like, yo, what's up with him? How's he doing? We should call him. We should do this. Hey, call this person. How's everything else? And it made me realize that the experience that we had was not something to just pass over, Like sometimes I was just like, man, Dakota, whatever. Like we're in college now. I don't think about high school. I'm moving on, everything else. And he's like, no. Nah, I think about all of you. Like, no, we're brothers, man. We're this, we're that. Nah, I call you because I love you, man. Say it back to me.
Yeah.
So, like when I hear stories like that, I'm just like, yeah, he has some other crazier, wilder stories. But I remember
Yeah.
us talking about like, Monahan's gonna play football. I'm like, yeah, he got Chamberlain's jersey, and we're trying to hype you up because like it was your first year playing football, and it's like we gave you this jersey because you deserved it, you belong, stuff like that. And I remember those hits. I'm like, man, Monahan was getting back up.
Yep.
Coach Al, Scott, run the ball.
Monahan! I hear that in my sleep sometimes. Monahan!
Jesus Christ. I gravitated to him, but I gravitated towards Kits a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Like the first person that like understood my psyche.
Yeah. He really got people.
A young man and just talking to me about stuff that, even to this day, I seen him maybe 5 years ago. We sat at Disney World and had like a conversation. He was like tearing up. I was like, freak, man. What the freak are you crying for? I'm freaking crazy, man.
Oh, that's cool, man. That is how he talks, too. You're freaking.
Who my pants? I was like, all right. So the camaraderie of sports and playing soccer, does your dad prideful about sports? Is he just like, he's excited? What does he say to you like when you're playing football?
Yeah, I mean, he was really proud of me for sure. There was also, my dad wanted me to be a wrestler. You know, he was a wrestler in all throughout high school and into college. And in that time in which I was rebelling for my father, it was this other thing. I was like, oh, I was really good. I was undefeated my 8th grade year in wrestling. And Kits had wanted me to, wrestle throughout high school every year. But I didn't want to wrestle because that's what my dad wanted me to do. So I played basketball instead because my dad hated basketball. And
it's not even to cut you off how crazy it is. That's exact opposite of me. I'm a dad. I hated my dad yelling at me through basketball, and that's why I picked up wrestling. Well, I always wanted to wrestle, but I picked up wrestling because he didn't know anything about wrestling, so he could just be a fan.
Right. Oh, that's cool.
Dang, man, so similar.
I know, it's very interesting. And in hindsight, if I was thinking about, I enjoyed my years playing basketball. I wasn't very good on offense. I was too fast, too fast to keep up with the dribble and not travel. But wrestling would have been more helpful for football for sure. But also in basketball, I had Shamar. He was one of the reasons why, again, like speed was this thing. It was like, Shamar was the fastest kid I've ever seen. And we would race in suicides every day at practice. If I could beat Shamar, if I could just beat him once, and we had that kind of, there was definitely a big brother energy with him in that. But yeah, I think my dad was proud of me to watch me do well. I think that, looking back, I can talk about these things in this contentious nature with us, but, even my dad is his own person going through his own thing and his own life experience and his own soul arc or whatever you want to call it. But aside from that, he did really, love and support me when I was doing well. So.
Did your mom go to the games?
Oh yeah.
What was she like?
Biggest fan. My mom was at every game, at anything that me and my sister did. That's something not a lot of kids have, is that kind of support. Even to this day, and whatever I decided to do or whoever I decide to be or the decisions I decide to make, my mom is always there.
Well, look, we're going to take a 20 second break.
Cool.
Someone's knocking on my door and they're ringing.
All right.
It's New York City. 20-second break. I'll be right back.
I do.
Okay.
Hey man, we're in New York and LA.
New York and LA. Thank you. Yeah, thanks again. I know we're up early. Where are you at?
I live just outside of downtown LA, and this is like, these like little loft
Like
areas.
Workplaces.
Yeah. they're like live, work, artist lofts.
Cool.
Yeah.
So, Brett, your mom's supporting, your mom's your biggest fan. We're in high school. What is it like in high school? Are you shocked going to the school, high school? Is it shocking a little bit?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, there's so many things about being, going through your teenage years, and yeah, I mean, it was like a whole new experience. The walking to and from classes, going to my locker, um, you know, meeting girls and having crushes on people and trying to stay out of trouble, and um, balance sports and education. And I mean, I was my superlative senior year was class clown. Uh, that's I mean, like I, I started. I think if I think back, it's like performance. Like I was always going to be a performer.
Right.
Like and my sister, like growing up, my sister was like always putting on plays at home, and I was a super shy kid. But coming to that military base and meeting other people, and then going into public school, I started like, oh, this is a stage. Like this classroom, like I can make a joke and make everybody laugh.
Yeah.
Like if I talk long enough, maybe we won't get to that assignment, later, or but yeah, I mean, and there's also it was a small taste of like, well, who do you want to be? Who do I want people to see me as? Who am I actually? But also like, how do I want to present myself? Who, like the groups of like who you want to hang out with. And for me, I was just open to hanging out with anyone, from people like Matt Bowman, and those kids to, to my sport kids, to, to kids that, the video game kids like Colin and Evan. And, I love to float around into those different circles and just meet people from all, that's what I loved. I was like, oh man, there's so many little groups and little cliques, and, I was just like I was excited.
The hub of everything.
Yeah.
Because when we're in this business, like when you meet, like I'm doing stand up, so it's like when people get in different crowds, it's like, no, it's okay. They're like, what? I was like, yeah, I've seen it all, man. I literally, you be around, doesn't matter what political party they are. I know what people laugh at. I know what things are from, what region and stuff like that, what people find humorous. When so when you get to your senior year, that's a funny story, because I remember Shamar goes, it was Garrett and Shamar. I forgot where we were, and he goes, I forgot what girl we were talking about, and he goes, you better watch out for Monahan. Scott can pull him. I said, you goddamn right. Because we would all just like, remember back in the day, we used to break inside TLF buildings, so everybody would party at TLF buildings, and I remember we're like partying, and then I was like, is that Scott? And they're like, yeah. They're like, Scott can pull him. I said, you freaking right, Scott can pull him. Yeah, that was, you're like Shamar's buddy, man. He would always ask about you and stuff like that.
Yeah, man.
Where do you think Scott is at? I said, I think he's on TV. He's like, what channel? I was like, I think.
Oh man.
So let's go to your senior year. Do you go to prom? Did you ever go to prom?
Oh yeah, man. I campaigned to be homecoming. I remember homecoming. I was like going around the school because Doug Bloom was nominated to be homecoming king, and so was I. And he was a good buddy of mine. And I went around that school like doing the whole like campaign, like, hey, vote for me. Homecoming king, like talking to everybody. Like, hey, what's up, Ethan? Yo, homecoming king, vote for Scott. But yeah, I mean, prom was a trip, man. I mean, we went to prom in Tokyo, like at the New Sano Hotel. And I remember, we had went to Korea the year before, and I got a suit made in Korea, all white suit. All white suit with white shoes, man. Where, yeah, it's a trip, man. He looked, I had my like frosted tips.
Who'd you go with to prom? Who'd you go with to prom your junior? You went twice or you went once?
I went twice. I went my junior year. I went with Shayla Garcia. She was a Mormon girl. And then after we broke up, my senior year, I brought Taylor Griffin-Kranz. You remember her? Brittany and Taylor, they moved from like Colorado or something.
Correct. I remember, this is a funny memory I have about your sister. I think she used to date this dude named Shane, right?
Mm-hmm.
I remember
Also Mormon.
I remember she broke up with Shane. He was throwing trombones and he was throwing, I don't know, he was pissed at, he was knocking over all these instruments inside class. The freak, she's just out here. And I was like, what? I was like, what is going on?
Mormon people, man.
I remember me just busting out laughing. He was going through it, man. Freak.
Oh, that's funny.
So you get to your senior. So when you're senior, do you think about college? What do you do? So when you get to your senior year, it's over pretty much. It's like, all right, this experience is over. Where do you decide to go?
That was a weird thing. When I moved to Japan, I had started doing like modeling off base.
Oh.
As a kid, from like 10 until 17, I had this like Japanese agency, and I would do like shoots for Kangol and like, you know, all these like Japanese commercials and stuff. And at the time, I wasn't thinking about it as like a career path. I was like, oh, this is just how I pay for my skates, how I buy a computer. And then around my senior year, I started taking voice lessons, and my voice teacher was like, man, you got a voice. You should go and study theater in school. And I was like, what? I'm gonna study theater in school? What are you talking about? And he was like, here's some good schools you could go to. And, you know, I started looking into schools and made like a highlight tape for sports. And the school that I ended up choosing to go to was a Division III school in Virginia. And it just so happened that that school also had a conservatory for theater and the arts and stuff like that. But I went there to play soccer, and you know, going back to my home state of Virginia, and played soccer for 2 years, and then ended up, you know, kind of mirroring my high school experience, focusing more on the social aspect, the sports, and not really focusing on school, like getting bad grades, partying a lot, really getting that first sense of freedom outside of the military structure, outside of the family structure. My parents had just got divorced. I was kind of in this rebellious kick. And then, you know, I took an acting class in college, and I accidentally like stumbled into, there's like a general education acting class, and then there was a conservatory class. And I had
BFA, BA, and BFA, right?
Yeah. And so I had ended up in the conservatory class, and the teacher there was like, hey, you should think about doing this, like studying this for real and doing this. And a couple days later, he passed away. And it was the last thing he had kind of said to me. And I was like, you know, this is the first time in this class in my history of education that I've ever been excited about coming to class. Maybe this guy is onto something. And then I switched majors. I got off the soccer team. And then the next couple of years of college were straight A's, Dean's List. And I'd found what I wanted to do. I'd finally stopped resisting against what my sister had been doing and telling me I would be good at, and kind of just leaned into it. And turns out she was right.
Let's back that up. Before we get into acting, you mentioned
Okay.
something. How did the divorce affect you? Do you think the divorce affected you going into college while you stayed away from things, or did the divorce happen as you were in college?
The divorce happened when I was in my junior year of high school. I had, as we can get into it, I had like my parents had been, you know, arguing and fighting a lot. And, you know, one night I saw something on my dad's computer of him chatting with somebody, some woman in some other country or something like that. And he didn't see me. And I was practically behind his shoulder, like watching this happen. And then I just went up to my room and held on to that secret, because I was, you know, if you're on a military base and your parents get split up, you go home, you know, you go back. That's it, you know. And I was also like, as a young kid, feeling like the responsibility of like, I have this big secret. And then I started really rebelling against my father, and not, you know, not ever saying why. Like, my mom was like, why are you being so, why are you push, you know, why are you so angry, you know, all this stuff, and holding on to the secret. And I'll never forget this one day I came home from practice, and my dad was sitting in the minivan outside in the driver's seat, and he wouldn't even look at me. And I go inside, and my mom and my sister are crying. Like, what happened? My mom could only really just be like, your dad, you know, something like that. And I just went outside the house and was just screaming at him, banging on the window. He didn't even look at me. And I'd found out that, you know, my dad had been, you know, unfaithful, and this whole thing, you know. And so that going into my senior year, there's a lot of that. My mom ended up getting the job as a school nurse. So she ended up being able to stay there. And my dad moved off base and got married 6 to 8 months later, remarried.
Wow.
Yeah. And my mom, so when I left my senior year, my mom still had one more year left in Japan, and she had to stay on the base, as, you know, my dad is remarried and her kids are gone, and she's kind of in this place alone. So that definitely also in a religious thing took a big step away from him of who he was, and what he believed in, and these things that he pressured me to be that he wasn't. And that rebellion kicked in this new whole level that carried into college, which, not to excuse any behavior or anything, but I was definitely, I'd kind of been ripped out of this other mindset and set into a completely separate, you know, way to escape and be far away. And yeah, it was definitely like, divorce is hard.
Did you lose your faith in God because of this? Did you lose your faith, or you lost your faith in your dad?
I lost my faith in maybe like Christianity as a practice, and what that meant as a person that believes in God. I think that I retained a connection to the spiritual, and the idea of the values of Christianity. But as far as what it means to be a Christian, or whether I identified as that, definitely I went throughout my entire college experience of trying to look into other things and be like, well, what else do people believe? Because maybe this isn't right or something.
When you're outside, and what side? You lived on the east side, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel guilty because you held on to that information? Or how long was it from seeing what your pops had on the computer to your mom finding out what she found out? What was that time frame like? Did you feel like it was weighing on your conscience of knowing something, that I'm staying because of my selfish reasons? Did you feel like that a little bit? I'm staying for my selfish reasons instead of my mother's been my rock this whole time, and I don't. What was that like? Walk us through those emotions of like the psyche of that.
Oh yeah, I mean, the pressure for that for a 16-year-old kid was immense. You know, the thing in hindsight to think about is that there was stuff, you know, going on for a long time. I was seeing a glimpse into what, you know, behind closed doors, the inner workings of, as they say in a relationship, you only the two people inside of it know the true inner workings of that. But yeah, there was definitely a weight on my conscience, but it was, like I didn't know what to do. You know what I mean? I wasn't sure what my role was in that, whether that was my place to say something. I had seen something that I wasn't supposed to. Is that something that, I knew there was like a secrecy about it, but like, yeah, I mean, it definitely weighed on me. My mom and I have talked about it, and especially after it happened, but she never held any judgment over that time.
When did you let her know you knew about it? Did you wait, or do you keep this a secret, or what? Still,
I kept it to my, oh, she knows now. Like I told her, that night as she was talking about it, and as the family separation kind of like started to take place, and like that night, it felt like a huge weight off my chest to be able to say, oh, this is that thing. And but yeah, that it was a hard thing to hold for so long. I think it was maybe 3 months. It's kind of like all nebulous, or I don't know, 6 months or something like that, but definitely long enough to play a huge weight on.
Why didn't you want to go home? What was that? Did you feel like you finally found a place, or you were just not ready to leave yet?
I think outside of the uprooting of that, it felt like which would not have been my fault at all, but it felt like I would be the reason the family was separating. It would be my fault. I always kind of like take responsibility for things that I probably shouldn't. And in that sense, it was like, felt like I would be the one that was divorcing the family. Felt like as a child, it was like, I'm the one that if I say this thing, all of this goes away. The family, our lives, our livelihood, everything. And it would be because of me.
Did you and your sister ever have this conversation? Like, talk about that? Do you guys get closer through this, or how's that bond like?
I think we got closer in that experience. She also went to college a year before me. So the next year. And, I think it also, growing up, my mom protected me a little bit from my father, and I spent more time with her, and my sister spent more time with him. And to be honest, the divorce is probably harder on my sister, even because of her relationship to my father, throughout that whole time as well.
Closer with him?
My sister?
Yes.
Well, I mean, me and my father don't talk at all. I haven't talked to him in probably 2 years now. So she still communicates with him occasionally. So I would say, yeah, in that sense, yeah, she's probably closer, but yeah, I guess she is.
Walk me through your pops getting remarried within 6 months. What's that like? Are you upset for your mother? Are you upset for yourself? Like, who and is it the woman that you caught on him?
Same woman, yeah.
Japanese woman, or just a regular American?
She's Filipino.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I did go. I was required to see my dad once a week. And I just wouldn't speak to him at all. We would go off base to some restaurant, and I would order beers and just like drink right in front of him. And
piss him off.
Yeah. And, we had to do like these meetings where we had to do some kind of activity once a week, and he would take me golfing, and I would just whack the ball as hard as I could in any direction I wanted to. And I was pissed. And, I was also so confused. I was like, if this is like, you want a divorce, you want to do this thing, you want to like be with other women or whatever, I don't know, whatever that is, but then you're getting married like right after. And the woman she's 24 years old. So,
oh, freak,
like not, 8 years older than me. It was like, it was a lot, you know, and to see him with her. I saw him with her at the Friendship Festival once, and it was a lot for a kid to go through, especially on a
Embarrassing
military
too.
base. Yeah, sure.
Did you notice that you said that one thing you didn't like about your dad was him embarrassing you?
Mm.
And he'd been embarrassed you again by this next choice of life. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, for sure.
So, do you have new brothers and sisters? Or does he have like new children and stuff like that when he gets remarried? Scotty. MTV Cribs.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, cool. Sorry about that.
Yeah, talk good.
Um, yeah, so my mom went to a year after I went to school. She moved to Connecticut, and
Like, do you have new brothers and sisters now or no?
yeah.
Did you
She
start connecting with them or no?
new brothers and sisters through my father's. Oh no, they haven't had kids as far as I know.
So, she moves to Connecticut.
Hmm. She moved to Connecticut and spent some. It was the first time in her life she was able to like because she was raised by a military father as well. So this was the first time in her entire life as a woman that she got to choose where she wanted to go. So she moved to Connecticut, and then a few years later, after processing her life and what she wanted, got remarried, and yeah, and that her husband and this man that is now I consider my father is it's nice to see. You want to see your mom happy.
Let's walk us through your mom dating. What's that like? What's that? How does that play on your psyche? Because now you're the man of the house. Now
Mm.
you're pretty much you've assumed the mantle of Simba.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So what's that like? Do you like talk to the dude, or is she like running it by you, or is she like sneaking off a little bit? How does she start dating again?
I think that was not something I really remember a lot as a child. I think she had been married for 20 years. I didn't. It was I think there was probably some things that she kept to herself about that.
Mhm.
Um, and and then I went to school. I went to college the next year and was just kind of doing my own thing. Um, but I do remember when she meeting this man that she had that that she had been on some dates with, and her boyfriend in Connecticut, who is now her husband, and uh, it was the first time in my life I got to play that role of. So what? And I said to him,
Intentionally.
Yeah, exactly. I said that. I was like, so what are your intentions with my mom? I was like, oh, I get to grill this man. But it also was this thing of like, you know, I want her to be with someone that truly like sees her,
Mhm.
respects her, honors who she is as a woman and what she believes in. Um, and, and of course there's also a huge amount of trust of just like, I respect my mother so much of knowing that if she feels good about something and she's listening to her heart, then she's right. So, and they've been happily married for a long time now.
The way your father interacts with your mother and the way your stepfather interacts with your mother, how does that affect the way you treat women?
Mm. Um,
Do you think
seeing,
you've grown treating women, or do you think that you were, how do I say this? How do you phase out of the player Scott and go into the serious Scott? How does that happen? Walk us through that phase.
Oh yeah, that's an interesting thing. There's you know,
Because
who
you saw your mother hurt before, right?
hmm
But
hmm
at the same time, you're a good looking dude.
yeah.
Platypuses flying at you at a rapid pace.
hmm
How do you not hurt a woman and see the same experience that you saw hurt? How do you not do that?
Right. I mean, I think there's a lot of trial and error, and a lot of error and things that you know, I think about this a lot. There was a point in my life when I would I would say to a lot of people, you know, I'm a child of divorce, and so I'm not interested in commitment. I'm not
Mm.
looking for that. Um, and there's a thing there's the power of words, right? If you say, um, you know, oh, I'm always late, then you're always going to be late, you know. And so by defining myself by who my father was, or even if you look at these mirrored images in my life of like trying to be something that someone is not, I was like, yeah, but who are you? You know, you are not just who this person isn't. You know, so trying to find, well, what are the things that I believe in, and to not keep resorting to that as some kind of source or excuse for some kind of behavior or lack of commitment or attachment, and say, well, what is it that who am I devoid of that, separate from all those things. um, and it took some time to really reprogram, um, how to be a good man, how to be committed, how to communicate, how to you know, to not be that that player world of like, oh, look, I'm not committed, we're not in a relationship, so I don't owe you anything.
Mm.
You know,
And
I
again,
don't,
for the people in the back.
huh?
Say that again for the people in the back.
Um,
You said I don't owe you anything. Tay, that's a bar right there that a lot of people ain't really. That's a bar that you just dropped right there. That's a
oh
future.
yeah, yeah. It's like you know, if we're not committed, if you're not, you know, if you're not my partner, then what? Then we don't have any kind of. There's no. I don't. Yeah. There's that understanding of like, what we're seeing each other. This person seeing. You know, it's like. But the truth is that you owe everybody that, regardless of whatever your contract is, at least the level of honesty, kindness, humility, those, you know, I don't
What
know.
age did you find that out? What age did you understand that?
Uh, I think, I mean, you know, when I got out of college, it was probably a couple years after college. I was like early, like 22, 23, um, started really evaluating myself
Mm.
and these tendencies I had, or you know, because I dated somebody in college for a couple years and had this like deep relationship with, and then there's always those periods after such deep relationships where you break up and you're this different person. You're like, I'm free, do whatever I want. I'm not looking for, I'm not looking to get my heart broken again. So I'll only give you this much of myself. Um, and through surrounding myself with women that I wasn't dating, women as friends and collaborators, and learning from them, it was like that's where I started. I had always was looking for these male role models, you know, to fill this void of father figures in my life, and I think that led me to looking more towards men for support and guidance of how to live life. And when I came out to Los Angeles, I was like, I just felt this need inside of me that was like, I need to be surrounded. I need like good women in my life surrounded. I mean, think about my mom, my grandma, my sister that raised me. And I kind of did a call out for that of like, I need this. And then the world answered almost immediately. And I was surrounded by these like five very powerful creators and women that were older than me, that it felt like, oh man, I've been going to the wrong team the whole time. And not that you can't learn, you know, you learn different things, but it opened my eyes to being like, I need to be learning and tapping into this as much as anything else.
There's so much in just having women. Like I didn't know how toxic I was until I started talking to women and listening to
Mm.
the stories and realizing, oh freak, I think they're describing me.
Yeah.
Freak, I did
Yeah.
not know it was that bad. Like I was stuff that I thought was funny or
Hmm.
anything else. I was like, oh freak, maybe I am toxic.
Oh yeah. I
Whole culture that we grew up is like a toxic culture because I remember as football was just like, go to the different bases, get the girls, have fun, blah, 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 blah,
hmm
boom. And then like college, boom. Early adulthood, boom, until you realize like I'm not committed. Like when you say like I'm committed, I'm not committed, so I owe you nothing.
yeah.
And I didn't commit, so I felt like I didn't owe anybody even my first name. I would just make up an alter ego.
Yeah.
So dang, that makes so much sense of just like, and I've been going back and apologizing for certain stuff.
hmm
And when you apologize, sometimes they open up things that I didn't know. I blocked out that certain information in my life. Where I was like, no, that's not Jared Waters. And I was like, oh, that was you.
Yeah.
Freak.
Yeah. You could really, when I think self-reflection is one of the hardest, self-evaluation, especially when it comes externally, of someone truly evaluating outside of your history or the excuses that you'll lay down, or oh, this is how I was raised, or this is this, or this person hurt me here. The truth is your actions. It's your actions speak louder than words. It's like what you are and how you treat people is can often be who you are.
Mm,
And saying, if you can evaluate and have those hard conversations and say, this isn't who I want to be. I don't want to be that. I thought I was supposed to break the chain.
yeah.
I am my father's son. You know what I mean? And I think, my mom and I's relationship throughout was those, any time that those things would mirror of father becoming son in certain moments, the heartbreak that would happen, of like, of seeing those similarities and times in life where that crosses and you're like, you know, I'm not perfect. I'm not, you know, it's a, it's an interesting thing to face. And then also to not lay that on your father as the reason why you are who you are.
Right.
Because you grow up and it's like when you're 18 and you talk about your child divorce, it's like, all right. And then when you're 20 and you talk about that, it's like, okay. You're 32. It's like you're defining yourself by something that happened when you were 16. You've had 16 years to grow from that,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Well, a lot of people don't get that type of help. It's really frowned upon
Mm,
in society for a man to cry, not even to cry out, to ask for a type of help, to
yeah.
humble himself and ask, like, this is not the person I wish to be. Or it's just even though we're millennials, I think we're the first type of generation that I started going to like working on our mental health and exploring like the way our mind feels. And then like the next generation of boys would be a whole lot better than us.
Oh, yeah. We can only hope so.
Yeah, yeah, I hope so too. Yeah, I hope so as well. So we get through college. We're finally in the BFA. We're acting and stuff like that. So you graduate. What's the graduation like? So does it like what's it like? Your portfolio? Do they say, hey, where do you want to move to? Should you go to New York?
Mm.
Why do you go to LA instead of New York or Chicago? Some people go to Chicago.
Yeah, well, the school that I went to was primarily known for music theater. So it was a pretty well-known school. They
Can you
had
sing?
huh?
Can you sing?
Yeah. Yeah, I
Oh,
can sing.
I didn't know that. F.
Yeah, I can sing, I can dance, I can do it all. But it was kind of like a New York City music theater factory. You go to the school, you go to New York. And I was one of the first kids that was like, I'm going to LA. I want to do movies. I don't want to be a theater actor for my whole life. I wanted to go where the money was, or what I thought where the money was. And so I moved to LA on my own. I told everybody the year before, I was like, I'm moving to LA as soon as I graduate. And then, graduation comes around. 5 days later, I pack up my car and just drive out.
Wow.
Just,
At 21, you drive. So at 21, you're like, I'm off to LA.
hmm
What
yeah,
did what did your professor say? Like, we really think? Did they doubt? Did they give you like self doubt a little bit? Like, we really think New York is the move for you?
no, we had a business of the acting class my senior year where you kind of evaluate different cities, Atlanta, New Orleans, Chicago, talk about the pros and cons. So I did a report on Los Angeles, and our school didn't train us in acting for film at all. Like there was no It was a theater school. So I really was coming out completely green, but also, colleges give you this false sense of confidence of like, oh, you're going to go out and you get this, I'm this senior. I was booked in all the shows like my senior year. I'm going to go out and make it big. And, you get to a big city, the biggest city I'd ever been in my adult life. And you feel how small and singular you are in the scope. I mean, you're in New York, you get it. It's like, man, it's like me, like just this year, however many kids came from all those schools all over the country to come there. But for me in the sports, it's like, I like to have a high ceiling. The higher the ceiling, the more competitive I become.
Okay.
So in a big city, I was like, cool, the ceiling is impossibly tall. So it gives me all that room to grow.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was part 1 of episode 84 of the Anchorage with my dear friend Scott Monahan. It's kind of cool looking at life through an artist's eyes, right? Seeing how he looks and how his creativity process and how he got to California and how he got into acting and seeing how his life transformed. Another Southern gentleman. So, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be dropping part 2, That'll be this Friday. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Jared Waters. This is the podcast One Man, One Tree in a Hill. To Mr. Roland Doe, just take us out with this theme song. Hey, you're live on the podcast One Man, One Tree in a Hill. Say what up to the people. This is when I see black excellence, man. It's Dave Chappelle, Michael Che, Lauren Michaels, Chris Rock, Eddie Murphy, all sitting at the table. I said, yo, Eddie, Mr. Murphy, I just want to say, man, you the GOAT, man. And you're the coldest nigga that ever walked the face of the earth. You gotta break that thing over. She wants it private, but y'all not even together right now.
So we haven't spoken about anything but the cat for at least 2 months.
And I said, and I'm be the next Jamar Neighbors. And she was up like, I know that's right.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to the podcast. My name is Jared Waters, and I'll catch you next time. Like, subscribe, rate the podcast. Have a wonderful night, wonderful day, whatever you're listening to. I'll see you soon.